Okay, today let's talk about how to find good scholarly sources or good credible sources. Remember, sources that are credible are relevant and trustworthy. They're sources that give you good information and that you want to use. And like I said, that are trustworthy so that you know the information that you are getting, you can trust that. When you are looking at if a source is credible or not, we're going to ask that you guys use this checklist because it's super simple. There's 5 questions that you have to answer when you're looking at sources, and I'm going to kind of walk you through how to um, go through this checklist and really know what each one of them means so that you can do it. And by the time you have done this a couple of times, it gets super easy to realize and recognize what these things are. So the first thing on the credible source checklist is the author of the source an expert? So what I ended up doing just for the purpose of this video is finding an article on something super random. So if you know me, I picked something about food. Why do we love junk food so much? So I'm going to go through and actually look at this article and that checklist at the same time to see if it's credible or not. So the first thing I need to look at, like I said, is the author of the source and expert. So sometimes this is really hard to find. Normally around the title there should be an author's name. This one says Ask Smithsonian or SmithsonianMag.com. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of a little weird because I need to know who actually wrote this. I need to know if they're an expert in this field. Like, why should I trust this person to tell me about why we love junk food? What are their qualifications? So I actually went, and this is where you guys actually need to do. You kind of need to become like a detective. You need to find out who would be the person that is publishing this. So I went to SmithsonianMag.com, just like what they had said. And then normally, so I went here, normally like websites or when you go to sources, they should have like an about or an about me area. A lot of the times they're down at the bottom or at the very top. I didn't see them at the top of this, so I scrolled all the way down to the bottom, and then there's other information there for you. So then I'm looking for this information. So if I was going to scroll through this and see what it has to tell me, I would want to go to the staff because somebody had to write this article. And so this is the staff or contributors. And so then I look here, and it's still, as I was going through this, is very unclear who actually wrote it. Sometimes, though, as you guys should have known or listened to the Ed Puzzle go over this, sometimes the institution itself should be the expert on it. So then I can go to like about the Smithsonian Institution. So then I'm looking at like what this institution is or what this magazine is, a little bit of history on them. Like they look very credible. They have a lot of good information. So then what I'm gonna do is go back to that checklist, and you know what, I'm going to put yes because I think that the source that I got it from, there's a lot of good knowledgeable people on that staff, and the institution itself or the source that it's coming from is well accredited. So I'm going to put yes. So a good example of this would be maybe if you're reading something from the New York Times, like it's a very well-known institution or it's a very well-known publication newspaper. So even if you can't find the actual author of the article, if it's coming from like the New York Times, chances are that the information that you're getting in there you should trust. The author of that source is an expert. That's why they're writing the article. So just something to think about. The next one is the information up to date? So I'm going to go back to my article and say yes, because this article was written this year, in fact, and not just a couple months ago. So hopefully the information that they're giving me, like it's very relevant, or it should be relevant to this date. So I can come back to my checklist, click yes, I will say for if the information is up to date, um, when you're looking for your own sources, when you're trying to find sources, the the one that is you're going to want to use is the one that has the closest date to the day that you're actually looking for the information. You want the one that's up to date, or you should really go with that. Not always will that be the best source, but you should really look at the dates to see um, which source is more up to date and would have more relevant information, especially depending on the subject. There could have been multiple updates on a certain topic throughout the years. Just like, for example, if you were doing something on technology, well, I'm not going to pick an article from 10 years ago, even, or 5 years ago, even, because technology is so rapidly changing that I want to find an article or a source that has the most recent and relevant information. So that's something to think about when you look at the date. But I would say anything within the last 10 years, like you shouldn't go much further back than that, just depending on the topic. So 10 years or um, less is a good point of reference for that. The other thing when looking for the date, normally just like the author should be somewhere similar around the title, the date should be up at the top somewhere on a lot of sources. So that's how you would be able to find that on an article. Okay, back to my checklist. Is the purpose of the source to inform and not to sell? So I'm gonna look at this article. You're gonna kind of actually have to need to read through it. And for me, I think as I was reading through it, I did not feel like they were trying to sell me on junk food, which would be what they would be selling in this article. I think that they were just trying to inform me on why we love junk food so much. And so I would say, I would go back to my checklist and I would say yes, that the purpose of the source is to inform. Now, you have to be very careful on this. So you need to figure out what the author's purpose is. So what I mean by that is if somebody is trying to sell you something, then chances are you're not going to want to use it because they have a bias. They have a reason why they're giving you this information. It's not just strictly to give you the facts or be able to like inform you on something. It is with a purpose behind it. And that's not always a bad thing necessarily, but that is something that you really want to think about. Like, what is the purpose of this article? What is the purpose of this advertisement, of this video, of whatever you're reading? Because if it is to sell you on something, then they have an agenda behind it. It's not just for the purpose of informing you on stuff. A really good example of this would be, for example, and just because it's recent with the times, but like when you see all of those political ads start coming out and and it says something like, I'm yada yada, and I approve this message. Well, they're approving a message that either goes against their opponent or goes for them. And the reason they're doing that is to sell you on them. And so that's a really good example. So yes, like those ads are great and kind of give you a little rundown of who that person is, but like still do your further research on and find an article or a source that's not going to try to sell you on them, but is going to tell you what you need to know about that person or about that thing. The political ad is just an example. So anyway, moving on. The next question, the fourth question, are there many facts and details rather than opinions? So that's a big one too. Like, is this an actual like article that's going to give me details that I can pull from it? Or is it strictly opinions? And opinions are just basically just that, what somebody believes. It's an opinion. Facts are like statistics, they're numbers, they're actual like cited sources, like within a source that's giving you information on that topic. Now, when I read through this, and I'm just doing this quickly, but again, I had to count this, or I had to read this article to be able to do this video. So I read through it, and a lot of what I looked at did not seem to be very specific evidence. Like there was some things like beyond the super high calorie count, junk food makers, and like so on. where I could tell that they were trying to give me information about this stuff, but nothing cited. I don't know where they got this information from. There's no statistics on it. So to me, this is actually more of an opinion piece. And so I'm going to come back over here. This is really important to note a lot of the times when an article or a source is an opinion piece, it's not one that you're going to want to use. The reason why you're not going to want to use it is because, especially like in school and what your teachers are going to ask you to do with it, or I mean even in life, when you're trying to support your answer or your own opinion with stuff, people are going to want you to provide facts and details. They're not going to want you to provide other opinions unless that person's opinion is an expert opinion. Like would be somebody who definitely knew what they were talking about. So again, when you're looking at this one, this, even if everything else is a yes, if it's basically opinion from somebody else, it's going to be, if you need to use it, you can use it, but you don't want to go off of people's opinions. You want to find actual facts and details from that article. And then the last one is, does the domain end with one of the following? And here are three different ends. So instead of a .com, you would have an .edu, .gov, or .org, and essentially that's like the internet's way of telling you that these have been approved and are very credible sources. Because a lot of .edu is .education, .gov is .government, .org is .organization. So it's coming from not just from an individual source, but it's coming from like institutions. Now, this does not always mean that it's going to be a credible source, but this is a very good indicator if it's followed up by that. This also doesn't mean that if the website says .com that it's not a scholarly source. If it checks off every other box and it has a .com on it, you can still use it. This checklist is basically to make you be thinking about these things. And I would say if an article doesn't have 2 out of the 5 of these, then you shouldn't use it. So for example, if like these were no's, then I definitely would not be using this source. So anyway, I'm going back here and you can just look up here in the with the link, and it's actually a .com, so I would say no. But again, that's not a make or break. That doesn't mean that I can't use this. The reason why I wouldn't use this source, if I was looking at it, one, it has 2 or more that are no's, so that would be a hard no for me. But also, this one is a big one. I don't want to support myself with another opinion. Like, I have my own opinion. I need actual facts and details to support that opinion. I don't need to be pulling in somebody else on this. So that's how you go through and you find, or you do this checklist and you find out if a source is credible or not. If you guys have any questions, please let me know and I will come around and help you.